Every time a city or a state talk about raising the minimum wage, conservatives lose their shit.
Every time we raise the minimum wage, the number of jobless people increases.
In the 21st century, it's a disaster.
I think it's inflationary. I think it actually is counterproductive in many ways.
Like all forms of socialism, David, the minimum wage destroys jobs, it destroys the economy.
Because apparently, paying people enough money not to starve on the streets or have a basic standard of living is very dangerous, folks. So in 2014, when Seattle announced that it would start down the road of raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour, businesses and conservatives predicted apocalyptic doom.
I would call it a tax. You want to raise minimum wage, you're going to pay more to go out to eat.
You're hurting those very people who are struggling now.
But Seattle's still nascent experience with raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour shows that a lot of these concerns are mostly bullshit. That's right, the opposite has happened. 3 years later, the economy in Seattle is booming. Wages have gone up, and low-wage employment in the city actually increased. And the number of hours worked also increased. According to the Seattle minimum wage team's findings, the wage increase had a near zero impact on restaurant employment, the opposite of what many conservatives and business leaders had predicted.
You're scared. I'm very scared. Yeah.
So are a lot of people in restaurants these days, and plenty of other industries in Seattle.
In fact, the city has more restaurants now than at any point in history.
It's been a surprise. The customers seem to like it, the employees seem to like it, and it seems to be working, at least in this location.
And prices at grocery stores and restaurants that business owners also said would spike haven't increased after raising the minimum wage. Because you know what has increased? Economic activity. Because poor people don't stack their money in the Cayman Islands, folks, nor do they invest in the stock market. They spend their money, and they spend it locally. In other words, it goes right back into the economy. And that's what conservatives forget to tell you. What actually creates jobs is people spending money. Think about it. All of these low-wage earners that are now being paid more money are eating at more restaurants. They're buying more groceries.
If the last 4 months are any indication, I stand to make about 6 or 7 grand more this year than I did last year and the year before that.
So that creates more jobs, which more than pays for the increased minimum wage, at least at this rate. Though official economic studies on this haven't been conclusive, in 1992, these two guys named David Card and Alan Kruger conducted a now famed study comparing New Jersey after it raised the minimum wage by 18% to its neighbor Pennsylvania, which hadn't raised the minimum wage. And here's the thing, they found a similar trend that's happening right now in Seattle. Restaurant employment actually increased and the overall economy benefited. Some did find negative effects to employment, but those were actually very mild in comparison. Now, this is not to say that this will always work, because at some point raising the minimum wage will lead to inflation. But what we do know is that the current minimum wage is not a living wage. It has actually left millions of Americans that work full-time living in poverty.
How my children get 3 meals a day is because their school provides 2 meals out of those 3 meals. If I was to survive off of 3 meals a day for my children, we wouldn't make it. We would be homeless, we would be starving, one of the other.
Which leads me to this. The goal of an economy shouldn't be to just have the lowest level of unemployment possible or the highest rates of growth. The goal of an economy should be to improve outcomes for everyone, not just the 1%.
Are you listening? Damn.